All right, we are live. Welcome to the Left Wing. I'm your host, John Cooper. TJ is not here yet, but he is coming. In the meantime, it'll just be me and our guest, Carlos Alvarez Aranyos from the American Opposition. Carlos, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I wanted to, so I've been following you, specifically American Opposition, for a little while now. I've really liked what you've been doing on Threads. Seen some stuff on Instagram. I want to give, I also know that you've been organizing with the 501 movement, correct? And but what's the other one that's been putting together?
Indivisible.
Yes, Indivisible, that's right. Should have had that off the top of my head. I've been to multiple Indivisible meetings, but I just couldn't remember. But I want to introduce this clip of you for anyone who's unaware, Carlos. Sometimes we have guests on here who are a little afraid to speak their mind. I don't believe Carlos is going to be one of them, given what I've seen from him. So I'm just going to share his top clip post here to give you a little taste of what Carlos is about.
We've had good presidents and bad, smart ones and dumb ones, courageous ones and cowards. But the common thread among all of them is that they loved America, and that despite their flaws, they understood that they worked for the American people. Trump is not like them. He is a liar, a coward, an idiot, and a clown. He is an immature loser who has no understanding of what he's supposed to be doing and whom he's supposed to be doing it for. There is nothing lower than Donald Trump. He is pure ego, narcissism, and greed. And we've already seen what he does with power. He separated families at the border, deployed troops against peaceful protesters, and incited a violent insurrection. He is not a patriot. He is a predator. So to every Republican who still bows before him, who still makes excuses, we say, shame on you. Shame on your cowardice. Shame on your silence. Because this isn't politics. This is about the soul of our nation. So I'm here today to call for Donald Trump's immediate removal from office. The only path forward is for Republicans in Congress to wake the fuck up and recognize that this monster has no business running our country. Impeach, convict, and remove. And then arrest, charge, and imprison. Donald Trump's final days should be spent in a prison cell, paying the price for ruining our nation. We need to hold him accountable for all of the damage that he has done to us. You cannot lead a country you tried to overthrow. You cannot speak for veterans when you mock their service. And you don't deserve the title of president when you're corrupt to your core. So to every American listening, the time for waiting is over. The time to stand up is now. Let this moment be remembered. Let it echo in the halls of power and across the states. Donald Trump is unfit, unworthy, and unwelcome. We don't want revenge. We want accountability. We don't want violence. We want justice. And we will not stop until we get it. Thank you very much.
It's amazing how self-conscious you become watching yourself.
Hey, you shouldn't be self-conscious at all. I'm going to give you maybe the highest compliment I'm capable of giving. but you felt like you were channeling Jason Kelsey's Super Bowl speech. I don't know if you are an Eagles fan or aware, but when I first saw that, I was like, I'm ready to run through a wall. What did that remind me of? And I was like, oh shit. He like even like that cadence, the raspy voice, the energy you came at it with. And honestly, that is the energy, in my opinion, that we need right now. I've been to a lot of protests, these organized marches and stuff, and I have just felt like I wanted more of exactly what you were just giving there. Have you always been like this, or is this something that you have put on yourself in direct opposition to Trump once it's done?
You know what's interesting is I started my career as a speechwriter,
Mm-hmm.
and I never thought I'd be giving speeches, and I've trained so many other people on speeches, but I genuinely never thought that public speaking would be part of my life. It started, I gave a keynote address at a publishers conference that became a journal article, and the fact that that transition happened was a credit to the speech, I think, and people liked it. But in this context, I honestly never thought I'd go out there. What happened was that particular speech I gave with Al Green when we were calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And during, like, right before that speech, he had committed to us that he would introduce the articles that he would eventually introduce. So it was a great moment of lobbying for the movement, of trying to get somebody to go into Congress and make the push for impeachment, because we wanted to get Democrats on the record to see where we stood with the Democrats more than with the Republicans. But to be honest, the whole speaking thing, I started American Opposition on January 26th, and I started it with a call for a national day of protest on February 5th.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, what would become 5051, which was on Reddit at that time, just as like a growing organizing effort, they made the same call, and those efforts kind of coalesced, and it became the first national day of protest on February 5th. Immediately after that, I called for the National Day of Protest on President's Day, and I hashtagged it Not My President Day. 5051 joined our call, but they didn't want to use that hashtag because they didn't want it to be about the legitimacy of the election.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tagged it No Kings, and that was the beginning of the No Kings tag, which we all have now come to know. But it's funny because looking back at that speech, I think to where this thing was born, and the fact that not only did I not intend to give speeches, I mean, the first one, I went to Denver. I live in Boulder, and I went to Denver. And I get there, and they said, you have to give a speech because you called for this. You're sort of, you started it, so you have to get up there. And I honestly didn't have a speech, but I made one up on the spot. And it went viral enough to let me know that was going to be a thing that I was now going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the 17th, I was invited to speak in D.C. by 5051 for the big Not My President's Day protest. I spoke right after Leah Greenberg, who is one of the founders of Indivisible. And so that sort of started all coalescing into what we now know as the modern movement, which I think is premised on sort of three organizations at its core. We at American Opposition do the sort of serve as a hub. I always explain that we do what we wish the Democrats were doing, right? Serve as a hub for unification, strategic communications, public engagement, to do opposition research, to do this, the billboard campaigns, things of that nature. 5051 is a national organizing effort, again, democratic, decentralized, and then Indivisible, which is started at the local level and really endeavors to organize locally and then produce national results. And the marriage of those three things, none of which overlap, really, we complement each other. And we either work together explicitly or we work together non-explicitly, but either way, it ends up being that we all sort of serve the same goal and become the backbone for what has now become sort of, to be fair, this movement on June 6th, we organized the D-Day anniversary protest, which was the largest veterans protest in American history. And then 2 weeks after that, we had the No Kings protest, which was the largest protest in American history, period. So I think it speaks to just the sheer amount of work and virality that this has taken. I mean, us as an organization, we're talking to roughly 40 million Americans per month, which is an insane level of engagement and virality, unlike anything I've ever seen, really. But it's a product of, again, I don't own it. Neither does 5051. Neither does Indivisible. Nobody owns it. I always say nobody's going to owe us thanks when we're done. We're all just going to get together as Americans and thank each other and be grateful that we achieved, hopefully, eliminating the threat of fascism to the United States. But what's nice about it is that, like, really good people showed up and they gave it everything, and we got this thing off the ground. And even the media, which is sort of attempted at every turn to ignore what we're doing, has finally given up and admitted that the sheer sort of size and scope of what we've achieved is worthy of their attention. And so it's been an uphill battle the whole way, but somehow, here we are with a movement in our hands that is legitimately trying to respond to the biggest threat our democracy's ever experienced, other than the Civil War. And we're doing it again on the backs of people who are volunteering. I'm not getting paid for it. I'm genuinely about to go broke because of it, maybe. But the fact that so many Americans stood up and came together and delivered. And then I think of the personal side of that and the relationships that I've built, the people that I've come to know and trust. And it's just it's my personal Mona Lisa. It's like my moment in time when I get to. And keep in mind that in 2020 I oversaw strategic comms efforts for Protect Democracy, which was part of a collective campaign that Time Magazine credited with saving the 2020 election. So it was nice to be sort of the person whose effort took hold here, because I was able to leverage that experience directly. Like, I didn't have a learning curve into this on the back end. I knew the groups I needed to talk to. I knew the moves I needed to make in order to make the thing go viral. I work in communications. I knew how to how to figure it out with the media, navigate the against their blockade and that kind of stuff. So I feel very lucky to have been in the right place at the right time, to be able to leverage my experience and skill, and to then be joined by an insanely talented cast of characters in developing what is now, commonplace, and what, again, we don't own anymore. I now show up at protests and I'm a participant. I still organize, but it's grown much bigger than any of us and any group or any individual. And it's just an awesome thing to witness America stand up for itself.
No, it's not about any one person. It's about coming together, as you said. The only way that we are going to defeat the powers that be is by standing together side by side,
Right.
and making it not about any one of us, but about the goals that we all seek to collectively accomplish, even with people on our sides that we don't always agree with, which is something I think in the specific, large, King's protests, all of those have done an incredible job of just bringing groups of people together that I have never seen together before. Like, I was marching at the protest in Philly, and one moment I'm talking to DSA organizers. The next moment I'm talking to an 85-year-old white grandma who's never been to a protest before. And it's very cool to see how many people we've been able to activate through these mass protest movements. And before I get to one question I have specifically about them, just wanted to say your speech got quite the applause in our audience. Zeke says, "Damn." Colby says, "Okay, modern day political pioneer." Hugh Jazz said, "Damn, dude, that speech was incredible, Carlos." And Hugh Jazz doesn't give compliments like that very often. So a very good speech. Really a fan of what you're doing. One of the critiques I've seen thrown at some of the protests that you've mentioned that you've helped organize is that they aren't, for lack of a better word, tough enough. They're more parades, family gathering activities with a political bent. And I have been certainly very critical of those criticisms, because to me, you got to draw on the big tent. And I think coming from you, hearing that speech and how fired up you are, seeing a lot of the stuff, the very combative and aggressive messaging that you put out there, it honestly makes those critiques seem silly. But have you seen people on the left talking like that? And what would you say to kind of answer that criticism?
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody wants a civil war because they think it's sexy, but that's not real life.
Mm-hmm.
violence is a loss for the nation. I mean, I think people have to remember that we have to be adults. And I say this very seriously. This country is worthy of a resistance that protects the core components of the country. We live in a special place, which is why we're trying to defend it. We're not trying to to create a new country. We're trying to protect the one we have and make it better. And that is our mission, and it is very simple. I am not here to overthrow the US government. I am here to remove Donald Trump, who is a cancer, and preserve the best of what we have, and then hopefully fix it so that these issues never arise again. We are at a moment in time, both globally and nationally, where we have severe threats from far right groups that are born out of a social evolution that's leaving a lot of people behind. And we have to recognize that the issues that people are grieving against, whether fair or not, we have to confront that reality, head on, right? What MAGA is saying is valid to MAGA, and we have to deal with that reality and the fact that they are a large enough group to define our political outcomes. And so you can't just reimagine the setting and say, I wish I were fighting these people on these terms with these tools. We have to dance with the one who brung us and protect the country we have. So I would say, first of all, you spoke about it. It's a large tent. The national protests are important because they build momentum. A movement has to move. And once a movement in a country as complicated and large and powerful as ours, once a movement is moving, it tends to be impossible to stop. So generating movement momentum, it requires the grandmother and the DSA member, everybody coming together. Additionally, we're modeling democracy, right? We're showing people that those people can coexist and work together despite not having the same set of beliefs. So we're modeling the country we wish to exist in through our protest movement and showing people that people who can disagree on a lot of things can still come together when they know it's important and work together in common cause towards a common goal. So that's part one. Part two is that the national protests are step one of a broader strategy. And the strategy becomes more aggressive as remember, Donald Trump is going to set the terms of the fight. We're going to win it. But ultimately, fascism is violence. Any violence in this movement will start from Donald Trump. We've already seen that. The deployment of troops in LA, I was at the front lines in LA. I led that march, and I had to stare those troops in the face. And I'll tell you, any violence that starts here is going to start from the fascists, because fascism is violence. Democracy is peace. Our power, whether people find it sexy or not, our power comes from our peaceful persistence, just like it did for Gandhi, just like it did for MLK. And there are components of this that, like civil disobedience, where we're going to break some laws, but even when we do that, we're going to do it in the spirit of John Lewis, what he called good trouble, the idea of breaking laws peacefully, just to show that those laws are, inequitable or whatever the case may be. But as we move towards campaign season, we're going to target the protests at the offices and where it's legal at the homes of the representatives who are most vulnerable. We're also going to seek to replace ineffective Democrats with better Democrats, because a huge part of our problem here is that the Democratic Party doesn't just suck at strategic communications, they're the worst I've ever seen. And the fact that they are responsible for the response, the institutional response to this, that Cory Booker could speak for 25 hours in the Senate and then 2 days later vote for Jared Kushner's father to be ambassador to France, that's a major component of the problem here, is that both sides are beholden to a patronage system that can no longer continue to exist if we're going to hope to sustain a democracy beyond the 250 years. So what I would say to those people is, look, we are grown-ups. I know what I'm doing. I've done this before. My first job in my life, I was 15 years old, and I was the editor of the online edition of the largest newspaper in the Caribbean. I had ultimately a staff of 7 people when I was 15 years old. I come at this from a perspective of maturity, emotional intelligence, and understanding what we need to do, building a strategy to get there, and then hoping to lead people to follow that strategy and all coalesce around it and unify a movement. Because if we're not unified, that becomes a separate and much more important sort of issue, right? But that takes time. just like people who are asking, everybody who writes, we need a general strike. I've been working on a general strike for 6 months. It is the most complicated political outcome to deliver under our system. It may actually be impossible, but we're working on it every day. And if you're going to throw out the line, we need it. Great. Give us some ideas on how you would achieve it that we haven't tried, right? Because ultimately, I'm not here for self-service. Frankly, I would have done much better had I not started this. This is a deviation from me from a life that was very comfortable, and now I'm not comfortable anymore, and that's a product of this. So, but I'm here because, again, I got experience in 2020 that I can leverage. I feel like until somebody better comes along, I will do my job of leading. I will continue to go out and express those thoughts that way because that's my inner monologue. And I find that my speeches tend to connect with people because it sounds like what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And I'm going to try to represent for that truth. When this is over, I don't want to be remembered. I don't want to be celebrated. Frankly, I would really appreciate it if everybody just left me the fuck alone. But in the meantime, while I'm here, we're talking to former flag officers to understand where the military's at. We're doing very high-level opposition research to try to bring down some of these characters from within. You've seen that. You just don't know it. We're going to continue to apply all of these tools. We're going to continue to focus the protests and make them more aggressive in the sense of aiming them at specific people, creating real pressure. They need to feel the fear that they're making us feel, even if we do it peacefully. That persistence that I talked about, that patient persistence, can create real fear. And then as campaign season comes around, we're going to cut off their funding. We're going to campaign against them. We're going to try to get better Democratic candidates like Mamdani in New York. We're going to try to replicate not that person, but that model for communicating, and try to encourage people to connect with their constituents and be real and to tell us who they are and to show us that they're going to fight Trump, right? That's our measuring stick for supporting people, and build a slate of candidates to replace the Hakeem Jeffries and the Chuck Schumers of the world that are not only standing in our way, but too proud to understand that they are the problem. And it's ironic that what Chuck Schumer did to Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer should now do to Chuck Schumer.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm here. I genuinely understand that everybody's impatient, that everybody sort of thinks that violence is the only way. But let me tell you, that is not true. The lessons of history on this are not just clear, they are sort of the clearest lessons of history. If we want to protect what we have and make it better rather than replace it, we need to remain peaceful. If they bring violence, we have the right to defend ourselves. That is an innate right that we all have as citizens and as humans. But we will never be the ones starting it. That just won't happen because, frankly, our power is our peaceful persistence. Our power is our numbers. Our power is our clarity of vision. And our power is our strategy. And on those fronts, we have a lot of good on our side, way more than the other side. I think we've seen now with what Donald Trump is facing today, that he really doesn't have a plan beyond his plan A. He doesn't know how to pivot.
He barely has a plan A, to be fair.
Right. He has a modus operandi A, if you will, a way he approaches everything. And we're exhausting that ability for that to continue to function. And by the way, what you're seeing now with Epstein and all that stuff, and I know we'll talk about that later, but what you're seeing now that he's facing 4 challenges in is because his entire system has been dismantled one step at a time. Now, some of that may not be obvious and evident, but it is a very deliberate process that we're taking here to cutting off the blood supply to Donald Trump's heart so that eventually it will stop working. And I just say to the American people, please trust us. We know what we're doing. We've done it before. And we're ready for this fight, not just to represent the problem, but to fix it and then to get the fuck out. And ideally, I can just ride my motorcycles for the rest of my life, find a job that takes me through to retirement. And I honestly will never ask for nor want any credit for any contribution I make, because what I'm doing now is what I'm supposed to be doing as a citizen of the United States. It's citizenship isn't just the benefits, it's also the responsibilities. What I'm doing is my version of what everybody should be doing, which is what can I maximally do to protect this democracy that I believe in, and leave it for my kids and for their kids, and figure out how to deliver. But again, this is not a joke. This is not, politics is the only realm where people tend to argue with the experts. I don't go into my doctor and say, no, you shouldn't do the surgery this way. When I had eye surgery recently, I wasn't debating the methodology of the surgery with the doctor. And I find it funny because we as citizens do have a role to play in informing each other and ourselves and et cetera. But I find that a lot of people sort of take their ideals and make them seem much more doable than they actually are. And again, I don't fault that, but I just want to caution people. This is going to take time. This is going to hurt. This country made a choice to elect Donald Trump, and that choice is a huge choice which comes with a lot of damage. And the best analogy I can give people, it's like we're like Luke Skywalker headed towards, the weak point in the Death Star. But while we're headed there, a bunch of our colleagues are going to take fire, and we're going to get hurt. Our own ship is going to get hurt. There's no way we come out of this clean. The best we can hope for is a free and fair midterm election to give Americans one more chance to do the right thing. That will be it. That will be the final choice. And based on that choice, then we figure out where we go from there. But ultimately, that is our mission. It is as simple as that. It's not going to be clean there. I can't tell you how many issues I wish I could fight, how many damages I wish I could fight. I think of all the migration situation, and as a Latino, how passionate I am about it. That's not my battle, right? My battle is Trump. And so I have to keep my eye on the ball. But while I'm doing that, I'm aware of how much damage is being done to our fleet, if you will. And sadly, we're going to have a lot of rebuilding to do, particularly now with the big shitty bill and all of that. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But step one is, can we get to another free and fair election and give America one more choice at the ballot box? And ideally, before then, can we get Donald Trump to resign? Because what's funny is that his psychological conditions do create the conditions under which we might be able to get him to do that. And we talked to a lot of psychologists who privately to try to assess how to maximally sort of use his psychology against him. But the question of whether we can get him to resign is an open question. I think we're on that path right now and trying to do it. But if we can't, then the midterm elections become our backstop. And then the question of, can we get enough Americans to do the right thing in the midterm elections? Because remember, Democrats are so bad at this that a lot of people still think that not only is Donald Trump doing a good job, but that he's doing a great job because he's doing what he said he would do. And the fact that Democrats haven't even branded an opposition campaign like the Contract with America. They haven't set leaders that people can connect to. They've really failed in every way. And there are individual Democrats that are doing a good job, but they're not feeding a centralized strategy. And all of that work gets thrown away. It doesn't aggregate because they're not feeding a joint narrative. So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of stepping up to do. And frankly, I'm sorry for the very long answer, but to answer those criticisms is simply to say, please know that we know what we're doing. That's not the problem here. The problem here is, can we get everybody on the same page and joining us to do it? Can we raise enough money? For example, I think our organization has total raised less than $50,000. The woman that said the N-word and got fired for it raised $700,000. How is it possible that American opposition, which sits at the center of the opposition movement, which has shown what it can do as a movement, and that we've barely cracked 50 grand, and that racist people are, and that the guy that was on with Mehdi, who called himself a fascist, has outraised us. Like, we need to take stock of that for a moment as a nation and figure out how to give this movement the resources it needs to move, right? But again, sorry for the very long answer, but those criticisms just need to be couched in more context, I think, and people need to understand that we're not lacking a plan, we're not lacking a strategy, we're lacking support. And that comes in showing up, that comes in giving the movement money, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It starts at your local chapters for Indivisible 5051. It comes to us and joining us and signing up for our newsletter, keeping posted with what we're doing, when we call for those targeted protests, showing up, putting your bodies on the line, all of that stuff is necessary. And so I would say people shouldn't have to worry so much about the broad strategy. They should be focused on making sure they participate and they fuel that strategy.
Thank you guys for watching to the end of this video or episode. If you're watching us live, you might have been able to point out, like Huge Ass, that I misspelled Epstein in the title card. Make sure to be with us at 6:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays if you want to insult us.
You
straight to our
also
face.
misspelled Jubilee.
This was okay.
And topics.
You know what? Usually I throw to our guest to tell people where to find them on this notice. Okay, Carlos, you've been great. Carlos, if any of our audience right now want to know where to find you, where should they look?
Okay, so American Opposition is at AmericanOpposition.org. They can sign up for our newsletter and they can donate. Please donate because we need to raise more money than the racist people. Secondly, me personally, I'm on Threads at C. Alvarez Aranyos, so my first initial and my two last names. And American Opposition is on Threads in a big way at American Opposition. We're also on Blue Sky at AmericanOpposition.org. But honestly, we're easy to find. Our email is contact@AmericanOpposition.org. We read every single email. We don't always respond, but we always read them. So if you have anything you need to reach out about, we are looking for large donors. We are looking for small donors. Basically, our biggest challenge is fundraising. So if anybody can help us on that front, it would be most appreciated. We are not going to waste your money. We need $5.5 million total to conduct everything we want to do through the midterm election. That is less than 5% of what Stephen Miller's PAC has raised. So I'm hoping we can meet that number so that we can give America a proper, good opposition that is worthy of this moment and that more importantly can win. And winning for us means getting to a free and fair midterm election or having Donald Trump removed before then. Simple as that. That is what we're trying to achieve. And we're doing every single thing possible to make that happen. So all of your support would really, really count.
Thanks so much, Carlos. We appreciate it. Fantastic guest. I love a guest that can go on a roll. We love that. Anytime that happens, we are all in. Folks, thank you so much for watching the show this evening. Just a reminder that today's episode was sponsored by the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Our contestant from the left wing will be John Cooper representing this show in 2026, and we wish him all the best. Folks, thanks so much. We'll catch you later. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Good times. Good game.